Israel has received the remains of another hostage, marking a significant development in the ongoing ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. The handover of the remains, which took place on the 21st of November 2025, is part of the fragile ceasefire deal that has been in place since the 10th of October 2025. This deal, brokered by the United States, has allowed for the temporary cessation of hostilities between the two sides, although the situation remains tense. The remains were transported to Israel by the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, and were handed over to the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, in the Gaza Strip. The IDF confirmed that the body was one of the last 3 hostages being held by Palestinian militants in Gaza. A source from the militant group Islamic Jihad, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed that the remains belonged to one of these hostages. The body was discovered during a search operation carried out by the armed wing of Islamic Jihad in the central Gaza Strip on the 8th of November 2025. According to the Israeli government, the delay in handing over the remains of this particular hostage constitutes a violation of the ceasefire terms, which stipulate that such handovers should be completed within a reasonable time frame. This most recent handover adds to the growing list of exchanges under the terms of the ceasefire. Since the ceasefire began, Hamas has released all 20 living hostages in its custody and returned the remains of 25 dead hostages. However, this latest body has not yet been identified, and its discovery marks an important moment in the fragile process of peace talks. Under the US brokered ceasefire agreement, Israel has released nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners while also returning the bodies of hundreds of Palestinians. These exchanges are part of the broader framework designed to ease tensions and build trust between the two sides. However, despite the handover of the hostages and their remains, the broader political and security situation in Gaza and the surrounding areas remains deeply unsettled. Israel has long been seeking the return of its soldiers and citizens who have been taken by Hamas. In a statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the continued efforts by the Israeli government to secure the return of hostages. Lieutenant Haydar Goldin heroically dodged into battle during Operation Protective Edge 11 years ago. His body was abducted by Hamas, who have refused to return it throughout this entire period, Netanyahu said. During all these years, successful Israeli governments have made great efforts to bring him back. This statement by Netanyahu highlights the emotional and political weight of the issue for Israel. The return of hostages, including the remains of soldiers, has been a key priority for successive Israeli governments. Despite the challenges, Israel continues to pursue these efforts as part of its broader security and diplomatic strategy. The return of remains has been a central element of the ceasefire agreement, with both sides agreeing to exchange bodies and prisoners as a means of reducing tensions. However, the delay in returning this most recent set of remains has raised concerns among Israeli officials about the viability of the ceasefire. Israel has expressed its dissatisfaction with the delayed transfer, stating that it undermines the trust built through the broader agreement. The ceasefire itself has been a hard-won development following months of intense fighting between Israel and Hamas. The conflict, which escalated in 2025, has resulted in significant loss of life and widespread devastation, particularly in Gaza. The international community, including the United Nations, has been working to mediate a ceasefire and humanitarian aid access to the region. However, the ceasefire remains fragile, with violations from both sides and a continued threat of escalation. As part of the ceasefire, Israel has committed to returning bodies of Palestinians killed during the conflict. This has been seen as a goodwill gesture intended to build confidence and facilitate the continuation of the peace process. The return of bodies is a deeply sensitive issue, with families on both sides demanding the return of their loved ones. For Israel, the repatriation of the remains of its soldiers and citizens has been a long-standing objective. In addition to the humanitarian aspects of the ceasefire, the broader political context also plays a crucial role in shaping the situation. The Israeli government has faced domestic pressure to ensure the return of hostages and the protection of its citizens. This includes securing the remains of soldiers who died during previous conflicts, such as Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Netanyahu's comments regarding the efforts to bring home Lieutenant Hadar Goldin reflect this ongoing commitment to securing the return of fallen soldiers. The process of returning hostages and remains has been a key point of negotiation between Israel and Hamas. In exchange for the release of hostages, Israel has agreed to release Palestinian prisoners and return the bodies of deceased Palestinians. This exchange, while important, has not led to a broader resolution of the conflict. The situation remains precarious, with both sides continuing to grapple with unresolved political, security and humanitarian issues. The latest handover of remains is part of the larger context of the ongoing ceasefire, but it also underscores the difficulties involved in negotiating peace in such a volatile region. The road to a lasting peace remains fraught with challenges, including continued military actions, political disagreements, and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In the broader context of the conflict, the return of remains is symbolic of the ongoing struggle for recognition and justice on both sides. For Israel, it represents a step toward fulfilling its obligation to its citizens and soldiers. For Hamas, it is part of a broader effort to maintain leverage in negotiations with Israel, while also addressing the demands of its own supporters and the Palestinian community. The international community has continued to call for greater efforts to ensure the stability of the ceasefire and the continuation of humanitarian aid to Gaza. The United Nations and various human rights organizations have been closely monitoring the situation, calling for transparency in the handling of hostages and remains. The situation in Gaza remains dire, with thousands of civilians caught in the crossfire of ongoing hostilities. Despite the progress made under the ceasefire agreement, the situation remains fluid. The return of the remains of this latest hostage is a small step toward de-escalating tensions, but it is not the end of the broader conflict. Both Israel and Hamas remain locked in a struggle over territorial, political and ideological issues that are unlikely to be resolved in the short term. As of today, the fragile ceasefire continues to hold, but the long-term prospects for peace remain uncertain. The handover of remains is a reminder of the ongoing human cost of the conflict and the complexities involved in the negotiation process. For Israel, the return of the remains is a step toward honouring its commitment to its citizens and soldiers. However, the broader issue of hostages and the political resolution of the conflict remains unresolved. The international community will continue to press for a sustainable peace agreement, but the path forward remains unclear. The situation in Gaza is still tense, and the fragile ceasefire is just one of many challenges facing both sides as they work to resolve the ongoing conflict. The exchange of remains, while significant, is only a small piece of the larger puzzle that will ultimately need to be addressed in any potential peace process. In conclusion, Israel's receipt of another set of remains marks an important development in the ongoing ceasefire agreement. However, the broader issues surrounding the conflict, including the fate of remaining hostages and the prospects for a lasting peace, remain uncertain. The international community continues to monitor the situation closely as both sides remain engaged in a delicate and high-stakes negotiation process.